How do criminals take massive piles of dirty cash and make it look clean and legitimate? It's not always like what you see in the movies, with all the shady backroom deals. Sometimes it's happening right out in the open, using the exact same systems that are supposed to protect us. Okay, let's get into how one of the biggest banks in Australia pretty much became a laundromat for organized crime.
I want to start with a number, 700 million Australian dollars. Now that's not a company's profit, it's not their revenue. That is the size of a single corporate fine. A penalty so huge it feels made up. And it was for letting dirty money just pour through the financial system. We're talking money that fuels drug trafficking and all kinds of other serious crimes.
And yeah, in 2018, this became the biggest corporate penalty in Australia's history for breaking what are called AML/CFT laws. That stands for Anti-Money Laundering and Counterterrorism Financing. And who got hit with this record-breaking fine? The Commonwealth Bank, or CBA, one of the country's largest and, you'd think, most trusted banks.
So that brings us to the big question here, right? How in the world does a top-tier bank get tangled up in a massive money laundering scheme and get slapped with a fine that shatters all previous records? Well, the answer is surprisingly simple and, honestly, kind of brilliant.
See, it all comes down to one single number, and a really clever trick that criminals use to get around it. The entire scheme is built on exploiting one of the most basic rules of our financial system.
The official name for this little trick is structuring. It's a classic money laundering move. And the goal is dead simple. Just avoid setting off any alarms by making a whole bunch of small deposits instead of one big one that screams, "Look at me."
And here is the exact rule they were trying to dodge. In Australia, if you make a cash deposit of 10,000 Australian dollars or more, the bank is legally required to report it to AUSTRAC. That's the country's financial intelligence agency, and their whole job is to spot exactly this kind of suspicious activity. It's an automatic red flag.
The logic behind structuring is just so simple, it's genius. Look at this. A deposit of $10,000, boom, automatic report to the authorities. But a deposit of just one single dollar less, $9,999, it just flies completely under the radar. So let's say you've got $50,000 in dirty cash. You don't make one deposit, no, you make 5 different deposits of just under 10 grand. It seems simple, but how do you pull that off at a huge scale without someone noticing?
Well, this is where technology comes into play. The criminals found the perfect tool for structuring. It was a piece of tech that was actually designed for customer convenience, but it accidentally became a perfect, anonymous money machine.
Let's just walk through the timeline to see how this whole mess snowballed. It starts in 2012. CBA rolls out these new ATMs they call Intelligent Deposit Machines, or IDMs. And the key mistake, they did it without a proper money laundering risk assessment. So for the next 3 years, you have over 53,000 suspicious transactions that just go completely unnoticed. By 2016, the scale is just insane. Over $1 billion in cash moved through these machines in just 2 months. And of course, it all ends with that massive $700 million fine in 2018.
So what was it about these machines that made them the perfect tool for criminals? I mean, just look at these fatal flaws. Think about it. You could make anonymous cash deposits. There were no limits on how many times you could do it in a day. The machine would even accept up to $20,000 in one go. That's double the reporting limit. To top it all off, the money was instantly available to be wired overseas, and the bank's own internal alerts were just being ignored. It was a system practically built for crime.
But you know how it is. Just when the banks and the authorities start to catch on to a scheme like structuring, the criminals have already evolved. They take the exact same idea and they shrink it way, way down, creating a method that's even tougher to spot. So let's meet structuring's stealthy little cousin, microstructuring.
Microstructuring is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It takes that core idea of splitting up cash, but it makes the deposits so small and so numerous that they just look like random noise in the system. They get lost in the millions of totally legitimate transactions happening every day, which makes spotting them, well, almost impossible.
This comparison makes it crystal clear. To launder, say, $18,000. Someone using old-school structuring might make 2 deposits of $9,000. That's still a pretty big chunk of cash and might still raise an eyebrow. But a microstructurer? Oh, they'll make 20 different deposits of $900 each. Good luck trying to find that needle in the haystack.
And this isn't just some theory either. Law enforcement actually uncovered a Colombian drug cartel using this exact method to clean their profits. First, they'd collect cash from U.S. drug sales. Then, that cash gets microdeposited into a ton of different New York bank accounts. After that, the ATM cards linked to those accounts get shipped down to Colombia, where their associates can withdraw the clean cash almost as fast as it's put in. It's slick, it's international, and it's incredibly effective. So after seeing all that, what are the big lessons here? What does all of this teach us about the way financial crime works today?
Well, the CBA case taught us some really crucial lessons. First off, it screams that new technology has to be checked for criminal risks before you roll it out to the public. It also proves that having monitoring systems is totally useless if the alerts they spit out just get ignored. And finally, it shows how simple controls, like just limiting the number of daily transactions, can make a huge difference in stopping this kind of abuse.
And for anyone on the front lines, there are definitely red flags for microstructuring you can look for. Stuff like a bunch of small cash deposits that just don't fit a customer's usual pattern, especially if they're followed by immediate ATM withdrawals in a high-risk country. Or seeing a brand new account suddenly get a ton of heavy activity. That's another huge warning sign. It's really all about spotting the patterns that just don't add up.